Hi and welcome back. It's Morgan from the CheekyHomemaker.com, and today we're doing part 2 of my video about a weekly savings plan. This is the key to making sure you stay out of debt. So of course, since this is part 2 of this video, if you missed part 1, it will be linked for you guys, so make sure you check that out first. I've been doing a budgeting series for you guys, so I also have videos on how to make a budget, how to budget on an irregular income. I'll link that whole playlist for you, so if you've missed anything, you can catch up. It really teaches you how to sort out your finances in a way that you can completely stay out of debt stress-free, and a way that you can figure out how to make the money you're bringing in enough money for everything you need, so you won't want to miss those. Make sure you stay tuned until the end of this video because I'm going to share with you the much debated answer to the question, how many savings accounts do you need? We left off with a bunch of things we're saving money for every week, and the next question is, where do we put that money and how do we keep track of it? Well, let's start with where we put the money. So the first option you have is to just stash the cash. This is something that is very simple because if you need to know how much money you have, you can just go count how much cash you have. But the downside is then you have a bunch of cash in your house. I don't have a fire safe in my house, so to me it's a little nerve-wracking to have all the money I've ever saved for anything all sitting around my home. This isn't the option I choose, but if you're comfortable with it, by all means, it is the most simple method to do it. The next obvious place to save money would be your savings account. Most of us already have one of those, and that's a great place to save it, especially things that you are only paying for annually. If you're saving it in your savings account, you do need to still make sure you are tracking all of the different things you're saving money for, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But the other thing is that if you're transferring too much money week to week or month to month between your checking and savings, you can end up paying bank fees for it. So we want to make sure we avoid spending money on things that are just fees for convenience whenever possible, especially if we're on a tight budget. So if it's an expense that's not as frequent, I do save in my savings account. But for the things like gift-giving funds or things that I'm saving up for that I know I'm going to have met my goal or had my bill come within the next couple months, I save those in my checking account. If you're saving money in your checking account, you need to be extra diligent about tracking them because it's basically what I call playing Monopoly. It's where you have to look at your account balance and know that that is not your real balance. Just like if you've written a check that you know has not been deposited yet, when you're saving money in your savings account, you need to subtract that money off the top of the account before you balance your account to pay your bills. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is how we track that money, and you have a couple options for that too. I have a couple of easy ways for you to track it so that it's not so overwhelming. If you've chosen cash to set everything aside, what I would do is somehow label each category of money, so whether that be with a paper clip holding the money together with a piece of paper on it or in an envelope for each category. So I would label that envelope with the label of the category that it's for, as well as how much money I'm setting aside weekly for that category. And then if it's something that's got a finite amount that you're saving for, like an annual bill, I would write the total of the annual bill on there also. And then that's it. If you're putting your money into your savings or checking account, then we need to keep track of things a little more in depth. So the first option that everybody can do is just use a notebook, pen and paper. So you would take your notebook and you would have a page spread. So not just one page, but the whole open notebook. And on one side, you would write down the category you're saving for, as well as how much you're saving weekly, and then the total amount you need to save if that's applicable to this category. And then you're going to write the date, the amount that you've saved on that date, and then very important, a running total. So every time you put money in, as you can see in the example, this one we're setting money aside at $25 a week. So I put the date because I'm saving it on the first of every month. I put the $25 in, and then I keep a running total for that category. When you go to balance your account, you will need to add all of your running totals up. So that's how you know how much money you have saved set aside in that account. If you are familiar with Microsoft Excel, that is my favorite way to track it. You just create a spreadsheet for each account, and you'll have columns that are labeled for each category. You put the date, you put the amount that you've deposited, and you can have Excel create a formula for a running total. There are other programs similar to Excel. All of those you can use also. Whatever you have that works well for you. If it's something where you can create formulas to total the amount you put in there, it's a really easy way to do this. You don't have to do as much math on your own. So you would basically just have an area that totals up each category, and then you would have a grand total. Either way you decide to do this, let's start with a savings account. If you're going to balance your savings account at the end of the month, you would need to make sure you've made a category for any money that was in that savings account before you started this weekly savings plan. So if you had a little nest egg in there or whatever it may be, just create a page or a column in your spreadsheet for that to account for it. And you'll then add up your running totals from every category, and that should equal the total on your statement for your savings account. If you've earned interest, you can add it to any category you feel like. Just throw it in and calculate it in as if it was money you deposited to make sure that you're balancing. If you're tracking money in your checking account, you will be doing the exact same thing, totaling all of your totals per category, adding them all up. But then this won't be a direct balance. What you'll need to do is then subtract that from the total money that it looks like you have in your checking account on your statement. And that leaves you with your working money that you can use to pay bills. So that's something you need to be very careful not to forget and accidentally think, oh yay, I have all this money. I'm going to go buy myself something from Tiffany's, and I'm going to go to Vegas, and I'm going to go out to a really fancy dinner because surprise, surprise, it seems that Morgan's method worked perfectly, and now I have $700 extra. Chances are, if you are surprised by a large amount of extra money, you haven't calculated something correctly. It might take you a couple weeks, maybe even up to a month, month and a half to get the hang of doing this, but once you get the hang of it, it is very simple. Now, what do you do when you actually use some of that money you've saved? All you do is put a negative entry. So where previously you were writing the date and you were putting the amount that you were putting into that category, you'll just do a minus and take it out of that category. And it'll be just like an old-fashioned check register. So instead of adding that to the running total, you'll subtract it from the running total. And then any money that you didn't use will still be in there. So if it's a category that you're continuously saving, such as gift giving, you'll know how much you still have in the account. Whereas if it's something where you wiped the whole category out because your annual bill came, if you still have room on the page, just keep on keeping on. Otherwise, you can start a new page in the notebook and just kind of close out that first page. The big question on this topic, how many savings accounts do you need? Well, I have heard people say multiple accounts. I have heard up to 7 accounts. I personally think that 1 account is perfect. Now, when I say 1 savings account, I am not considering a retirement account or a high interest savings that you might have for a larger chunk of money or any CDs or anything like that. I'm talking about your functional savings, like your emergency fund and the money you're setting aside for different expenses. 1 account is plenty, and I'll tell you why. When you have multiple savings accounts for each of the different categories you're saving money for, then you also have multiple statements and multiple account numbers, and you need to keep track of all of them and know which account is for which thing. I think if you're going to be going through the work to keep track of that, you might as well just have 1 account where you keep track of everything with pen and paper or in Microsoft Excel. Why track something and have to deal with the extra paperwork and deal with transferring money into multiple accounts when you don't have to? So I think 1 account is perfectly sufficient. And if you have all of your money in 1 account, hopefully you'll eventually end up with a balance high enough that you'll start getting some rewards from your bank, some fees waived and things like that. Now, if you're currently paying to have a savings account, since you may be now saving money every week, you should see if your bank has some sort of setup where they will waive the fee to have the savings account if you have an automatic transfer going into that account. So if you know that between your car insurance and your savings for that trip to Europe and your gift giving money, you're setting aside maybe $150 into your savings account, why not set that up to be an automatic transfer so you know for sure you are paying yourself for those categories, and it might waive your bank fee. So check that out. Another great tip, there are some bills out there that most of us just pay monthly because that's the only way we've ever been able to do it, such as our car insurance bill. And we are getting dinged with interest charges and sometimes just financing charges that aren't even interest on top of the interest for doing so. So sometimes you can save upwards of like $50 a year just by paying something in a lump sum instead of paying for it on a monthly payment plan. Now, of course, it's very difficult to save up the money to pay something for the whole year while you're currently paying it. What I've done in the past is use my tax return. So I'll take my tax return money and throw all of it at something like my car insurance, and then the money that I would be using to pay that car insurance bill throughout the year instead gets set aside in my savings account for when the bill comes around again. And there you go. I just saved $50. And even though you might have preferred to use that chunk of change that you received for something a little more fun, you are paying yourself. You need to pay yourself first. You are taking care of your future and your finances by doing this. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future budgeting series, and also share my video. I really appreciate it when you take the time to do so. You can find me at thecheekyhomemaker.com, as well as on Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram at thecheekyhomemaker. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.